Welcome back to part 4 of our Legacy of the Montgomery County Courthouse presentation. So we have to keep this a secret because this is Kristen's part of the presentation, and she actually recorded it and got it all ready for me to post, and then I accidentally deleted it. So we won't tell her that I did that. It will be our little secret. And just understand she would have done this a lot better than me, but because I can't bear the thought of telling her and making her record it again, I'm just going to do this real quick and knock it out. So the end of the presentation is, what do you really want to know after everything that we've told you in the first 3 parts? And that is what the project cost is estimated to be, the taxpayer impact, and how we can maybe offset the impact to taxpayers using revenue instead of taxes. So, project cost. There are 3 different options ranging from about 131 million to 184 million, and that figure is not lost on us. One of the projects includes a parking garage, and one of the projects, of course, the first one does not. So there are different variances of options that we can use to fulfill the needs of the courthouse. What we will get 20 extra years of space. So basically, there are allocations made for what the planners project will be the necessity for future courts in the amount of 20 years worth based on population growth projections for our county. Understand this plan was done 4 years ago. So now we're at 16 years of growth because we didn't start the project when the recommendations were made. It will be a single structure, which is very important for security and for operations, that will contain approximately 290,000 square feet. The plan was done by interviewing all the departments that would be part of the complex, finding out what their current work processes are, their current personnel, and projecting out in the future. So there should be adequate space for everybody. Right now, we have 160,000 feet, which is more than 100,000 feet less than what we actually need. It will accommodate 28 courtrooms, which would allow for 20 to be used now, 8 shell courtrooms, which is that expansion space, and there's 1 major cases courtroom, which is basically for cases that involve several different parties, meaning maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 different parties. So they all need their own counsel table, or maybe a case that has gotten a lot of publicity. So we have a lot of people from the public that want to come and watch in the courtroom, and we don't currently have a courtroom to facilitate those types of cases. The facility would include a tax office. Why are we talking about a tax office? The tax office is probably the only building in the county that is worse off than the courthouse. And the tax office has something in common with the courthouse, which is they have a sally port, and we need a sally port. And a sally port is basically a place where you can securely deliver things, whether that be money, license plates, or incarcerated human beings. And the way a sally port works is there is a fence gate that opens up. A vehicle can drive through that gate. It then closes up, and then another gate opens up to let the vehicle into the courthouse complex for offloading whatever might be being brought to the courthouse. So that is what a sally port is. And the nice thing is that by handling the project this way, you get 2 capital projects for the price of 1, because we do need a new tax office as well. The facility also has not a jail like where we would house people overnight, but it's got a big enough jail / holding facility that instead of having multiple trips to the courthouse every day, which is what the sheriff currently has to do, they could bring 1 group of prisoners over or all day from the morning and they would stay to the afternoon, so that the transports would be cut to 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, because we would have adequate facilities for housing those individuals while they're at the courthouse. We would like to see some revenue streams go towards this project, and there's been a lot of research done by your facilities committee to try and help think about ways that we can pay for this other than with tax funds. First of all, the tax office, because they would be part of the build out, has a capital improvement account. It had 5.6 million in it a year ago when this presentation was created and presented to Commissioners Court. It has more money in it now, but that fund is available to immediately put down towards this project. There's also a court facility fund that has now closer to $1 million to it. This court facility fund is mandated by the legislature, and it's comprised of, every time there is a case filed, there's a certain amount of dollars from that case that gets put into a fund that is dedicated to facilities for the courts. And that has, again, probably closer to $1 million in it now, current day. We could sell the buildings that we will no longer be using, because we will be vacating those with the departments that will go to the new courthouse. On the tax rolls, those 3 buildings would net between 28 and $30 million. Understand, with everything upgraded on the square, we might be able to get more than that for those buildings. Additionally, with the court facility fund, that fund just doesn't go away. It replenishes every year because there are more and more cases filed, and we're estimated that that will render at least $200,000 a year towards what we need, and hopefully towards this project. Executive suites. This is kind of an out-of-the-box idea we had, since we know we're going to have 8 vacant courtrooms, which is essentially a couple of floors in that building. We could have a third party come in and create executive suites for lawyers to come lease, to have mediations, or to have their offices right there conveniently in the courthouse. We are anticipating about $1 million revenue a year from that, if that's something that commissioners would like to see happen. An event center, looking towards Collin County. They took their old courthouse once the historical commission came in and fixed it up, and they have weddings and different conferences and things in that old courthouse. And so one thing we could do with our old courthouse, once the historical commission comes in and helps us get that in a more presentable way, is create an event center in downtown Conroe, which, for estimates off of what Collin County is making, would be about $200,000 a year. Because the sheriff is not having to come over approximately 12 times a day, which is what our sheriff told us that they're having to do now, we're anticipating the cost savings in the reduced transport from all the maintenance and gas and things associated with that would create savings of about $840,000 to $1.2 million a year. And also repairs in the current buildings that we have, if we got rid of them, that would save us about $272,000 a year. So please understand, the judges are trying everything we can. We're really brainstorming to figure out how to make as little as an impact financially on the taxpayers as possible. Financing options. We did want to touch base on financing options and how it would work. Of course, everybody's heard of bonds. We have a road bond that passed within the last year. And so bonds are what the county does typically when they want to finance big projects. That would go out to a vote. If approved, then the money would be available for courthouse building. However, once a bond is passed, it might little be known that the commissioners can use that money for whatever they choose. So it doesn't have to necessarily be used for what the advertised use was at the time of the election. There's another option called a certificate of obligation. It works just like a bond does, except for there typically is no vote. We normally see those in emergency situations. Maybe a hurricane takes out some facility, like maybe the jail or something like that. And because bonds can only be put to a vote 2 times a year, there's just not the time to go without that infrastructure, and it creates an emergency. And so the county can issue certificates of obligation. They can also do it in non-emergency situations. We don't anticipate, based on chatting with the commissioners, that this is really going to be an option for this project. Another option, which we have seen other counties use, which is really interesting, is a public-private partnership. And what that looks like is a separate corporation that is created that will obtain the financing for the project and the property if necessary. And then there is an agreement between that corporation and the county that the county will make certain payments, typically in the form of lease payments, to be able to use the facilities. And sometimes that is going to end in, think of it as a lease to own, or like your house mortgage, something like that. So in that situation, you wouldn't have the full weight of the bonds sitting on top of the taxpayers. Instead, it would be something that would be paid out over a number of years and would be worked into the regular budget for the county. So it's still taxpayer dollars, but without that huge debt load hitting the taxpayers all at one time. So that is also an interesting option that we would like to see the commissioners review. Interestingly enough, the public-private partnership cannot go to a vote. You might be in a situation where a bond would create a tax burden and a public-private partnership wouldn't create a tax burden, but there wouldn't be voter approval for that option. So kind of interesting different options we have for financing, but we know everybody's been asking, and that's just something the commissioners will have to decide at the time that they decide to take action on this. So again, we're out of space, out of time, and out of options. Please don't tell Kristen I deleted her presentation. And thank you for joining us again. Please follow the Facebook site. Please invite your friends to follow the Facebook site. We need your help to get this project through.